Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Cohn. I'm the Vice President of Broadcasting and Marketing here at NCMA Boston, back with yet another Meet the Speaker interview for our AI in Contracting Conference. This time I'm joined by Joe Mazzarella, partner at McCarter and English. He's going to be talking about how AI impacts contract ABCs. Joe, welcome.
Thanks, Adam. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Well, let's see. I'm a partner at McCarter and English. It's a law firm. I've got about 30 years of business and legal experience being a board director, general counsel, and actually chief operating officer of some telecom companies, communications and software companies. I've got a background in science. I went to Tulane Law School. I've got about 150 patents, U.S. and international, and from everything from clean energy systems, to databases, to wearable computing, AI, IoT, blockchain. So I have a pretty good background in the area we're going to talk about today.
Didn't realize I had to pay you more for this. My goodness. The more I'm hearing this, the more I realize I got to pay you more for coming. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know about that, but I've been able to work in the private contracting realm, federal, state, local, as well as some international spaces. A lot of my time has been spent actually in the public safety, homeland security, and defense areas. So I'm actually been exposed to some of the kind of more forward-looking kind of concepts that might apply to AI.
Cool. So talking about, you have 150 plus patents, you've got all this experience in different areas. What got you into your field?
That's a great question. It's one of those things. It's one of those life things, I think. But I've always had this interest in just artificial intelligence, how the mind works, and so I've always kind of followed along. There's some great stuff that's come about, that we all recognize today. But the conception of AI goes back a long, long time, actually. So there's some really great giants in the field, like Alan Turing, Claude Shannon, who did some stuff with entropy theory and information transmission. There's all kinds of interesting things, but these ideas have been around for a very long time, and it's only now that our technology is kind of caught up to those ideas. Right. We're starting to see it blossom. So some of the things that I've done, which what got me into it is actually a book called Gödel, Escher, Bach, which was a book by Doug Hostetler back in the early 80s or late 70s, which kind of went into this whole idea of what it means to be. How do you recognize intelligence? Can you create intelligence from basically meaninglessness through syntax and some of those kind of ideas? So it was pretty profound, and it kind of opened up the world, I think, to the general public, to the idea of AI at that point. There's been some other really fun, fundamental kind of interesting books that I think have shaped the way I think about things. Like there's a book by it's called On Intelligence by Jeffrey Hawkins, who actually invented the Newton tablet device, the very first hand recognition device.
Oh, that's cool.
And he talks about how the brain works from a neocortex standpoint. There's another great book by a guy by the name of Philip Ball. It's very accessible. It's called The Self-Made Tapestry, and it gets into self-organization and how intelligent systems can arise from basically non-intelligence. It's fun. It's to me, it's just fascinating stuff. So, from my perspective, it's just incredibly interesting.
Very cool. So learning about all this stuff, you talked to us about a lot of what interests you and what got you into the field. You're presenting on how AI impacts contract ABCs. What interests you specifically about this topic that you're presenting on?
Well, it's interesting because contracts are really a human construction or conception. If you think about the basic concept of a contract and what its elements are, you have a thing called the meeting of the minds, right? So you're talking immediately about human beings being able to agree on something. And it's a form of private contract or private law, really. It says, this is how I'm going to behave. This is how you're going to behave. And here's the consequences if we do or if we don't. When you get into things like AI, you have this kind of semi-autonomous thing, which is non-deterministic. What it means is basically, the analogy, which I'll save a little bit for when I talk about, is like renting a dog, where it's been trained, but you don't necessarily know what it's going to do all the time. So we'll get into that a little bit and really talk about, in the context of that analogy, which breaks down over time, but it's a good idea conception or a way to think about things is, if you start thinking about what the responsibilities are of who and whom in response to when the dog does something good, bad, and different, and can we trust that the trainer trained it right, and so forth and so on. You can see, you can gain like an analogy to how you might have to think about risk allocation.
Cool. All right. So specifically about your session, what can people expect to learn? Obviously, we know this entire conference is based around artificial intelligence and contracting. But when I think of your particular topic, it's like, oh, Adam, that's so basic. We don't even have basic in contracting yet. There's no laws governing it. So what can people expect to learn?
Yeah, well, this is great. I mean, so the law is a wonderful thing in a way because it's very adaptable and it often works by analogy. So a lot of the things that I would say a contract professional might understand would normally apply.
Okay.
But they apply maybe not in the way you think. They're a little bit more nuanced. And so what we're going to talk about is some of the basics, really, just talking about things like indemnification, intellectual property, insurance, licensing, even some stuff that predate or is prior to contracting itself and the due diligence, and maybe some of the things especially you have to do in that context, even before you think about contracting for a system that has AI in it. And then we'll spend a little bit of time, obviously on privacy, notification, some of these other issues. But there's a kind of an interesting little area out there that would be, I think, very interesting for government contracting, which is the data rights and how we deal with data rights in the context of AI, because it's a little bit different from what we normally understand about intellectual property.
For sure. Is there anything else you want to share?
Well, I'm excited to be there. Hopefully, the audience will learn something. I'd like to cover the basics of AI because, fundamentally, if you can understand the basics of how the systems work, it's going to give you a much better appreciation how you need to, forecast or think about potential contract issues. So we'll cover some of that as well. Hopefully, it'll be a good talk, and I'll look forward to talking to you then.
Likewise. Thank you, Joe, so much for doing this interview. Folks, you're out there, head over to ncmaboston.org. Sign up for the AI and Contracting Conference, November 20th, 2024. Breakfast networking from 8:30 to 8:55 a.m. Get there early to really get in there and learn how to walk around, use the software, talk to people, network. We want to make sure that you're taking a good amount of time to test your network prior. All the information will be sent out to all of our registrants. Plenty of time to still get in. We'll see you there.